Where am I? Why can't I remember how I got here? The familiar room seems alien. Cold walls, dull light of the lamp, and the clock on the wall casting long shadows, which seem to crawl to me to drag them into the abyss. I'm scared. I want to scream, but the throat is as if clogged with glass. The words do not break out. The pulse in the temples beats so loudly that I am afraid that he will soon break out of his chest and take me to chaos. I'm trying to remember at least something. The mother's face, the smell of rain, the call of the phone. But in the head, the emptiness is an abyss of oblivion. And fear, it grows like a living creature, devours the remnants of calm. How long have I been here? Why didn't anyone come? Why am I alone? The shadows are thickened, and a silhouette appears in them, a familiar and a stranger at the same time. I'm trying to understand who it is, but my eyes refuse to work. The heart is shrinking as if it foreseen the inevitable. Do not leave me, I whisper, although the voice is only a quiet echo. And then I understand this is not just a room. This is my prison. Prison of my mind, my fears, my unexpressed words. Yesterday seemed so clear, and today, like darkness, and I am a prisoner of my own memories. I lay on the cold floor, feeling every stone and crack dig into the skin, awakening at the same time pain and a forgotten feeling of reality. My eyes slowly got used to the dim light, and in this partial shade I finally saw the situation around me. The usual, it would seem, room, with cracked walls, a widened chair in the corner, and a half-open window, through which the wind burst from the street, bringing with it a mixture of raw asphalt and rain. But this life hid something more, something dark and overwhelming. All this atmosphere is as a reflection of my internal state, crushed by the load of unknown horror and loneliness. I realized that I was not just in a locked space, but in a trap of my own soul, where every fear and every pain were enclosed in a cell of silence. My thoughts, like screams in the void, clung to scraps of memories. I tried to find the reason for this horror, but all the roads led to one thing, to the fact that I myself allowed myself to be a captive. Other people's expectations, lies, and illusions, as if my whole world was created so that I would forget who I really am. Suddenly, the image flashed in his memory. Vague, but distinct. I stood in front of a mirror, distorted, like cracks in time, and did not recognize the reflection. There was a man clenched with fear and shame, a man whom I was afraid to meet. I saw myself in this mirror, but not real, but created by someone else, hostage of other people's rules and imposed roles. The heart sank and the tears flowed by itself, without guilt and shame. I cried not from weakness, but from awareness. I lived in the shackles that I put on myself, and only now, in this cold loneliness, a spark of recruitment was born, weak but living. At that moment, when the tears covered his eyes, the room suddenly began to seem so scary. In her silence, I heard my own breath, now not as a heavy sigh of despair, but as a call to life. Inside me, something new boiled, not fear, but an incomprehensible thirst for freedom, although I still did not know where it would lead me. I got up, my legs were trembling, but I stepped to the window. The cold wind burned the skin, but with it brought the smell of rain, freshness, something unfamiliar, but beckoning. Looking at the street, I saw the city, grey, cold, but alive. People, cars, noise. All this seemed far from my little room, my frozen fear. "You are not alone," whispered a voice inside. It was me, but the other is the one who fights, who does not give up. And this word was the beginning of a new chapter. I realized that I could choose to stay in the dark prison of my own mind or try to break into the light, through pain and doubt. But the path to freedom was a thorny. Memories attacked by waves, scenes from the past where I allowed others to decide for me, where fear and uncertainty kept me in chains. I saw faces, friends whom I betrayed in silence, loved ones whose words I have not heard. In every memory there was a wound, open and purulent, recalling those years when I did not live my life, but a stranger. And yet in this darkness I began to see the sparks of hope. I remembered the first steps when, at least for a moment, I believed in myself, when I first said no to the inner voices that said, "You are not worth anything." I understood that there would be a struggle ahead, with myself, with the past, with those who are used to seeing me in captivity. But for the first time in a long time, I felt that I had the power to resist. Time is a strange thing. It seems to be stretched and compressed at the same time. In my mind, the clock turned into minutes, and minutes into an eternity filled with anxiety and struggle. Every morning it began with the inner battle. Open his eyes and take a step towards the day that seemed alien and hostile. But I studied this step, like a child who is learning to walk for the first time. Uncertainly, falling, but still getting up. The first days of awakening were filled with loneliness. It seemed to me that the whole world turned away, and I was left alone with my fears and doubts. A storm flashed inside me, involuntary thoughts about the past, about those moments when I betrayed myself for the sake of someone else's approval. I saw how slowly but surely the walls are raised, erected around me for years. At that moment, he appeared on my way, a man whose name sounded in my thoughts for a long time, like a ghost, my old friend whom I was afraid to meet. His gaze was full of regret and pain, but also understanding. He did not condemn me, as I used to think, but was simply nearby. This was the first real support that I allowed myself to accept. The meeting with him was a turning point. We spoke for hours, analyzing my fears, my pain and doubt. He helped me understand that awakening is not an instant leap in a new life, but a slow, painful process of liberation. And that in this process, there is no place for lies, neither in front of yourself or in front of others. Every day I became stronger, although the wounds of the past were still sick and reminded of themselves. I learned to accept my mistakes, forgive myself, and allow to be vulnerable to yourself. In this recognition of weakness, I found a force that used to seem unattainable. Sometimes, when the nights came, I again came across shadows, not those on the walls of the room, but with the shadows inside myself. They whispered familiar accusations. You are weak, you are not worthy, you cannot. These voices seemed alive, penetrating into the heart, tearing the inner world into parts. But now I began to study not to hide from them, but to meet them face to face, look directly into my eyes and say, I am no longer your victim. One night, sitting by the window, I saw the first ray of dawn gently touch the horizon, filling the city with a gold light. It was a simple moment, but it revealed a new truth to me. The light can break through the darkest nights. At this moment, I realized awakening is not only a liberation from the past, but also the adoption of the future, with its unknown and fears. My days were filled with small victories, simple decisions that seemed insignificant, but became bricks new life. I began to build myself again, step by step, breaking old stereotypes and imposed frames. Inside me, the feeling grew that I finally returned home, not to place, but to myself. However, this path was far from straight. At every step, there were new doubts and tests. Sometimes it seemed that the old wounds opened up again, that I again plunged into the darkness, which for so long was my refuge and prison at the same time. But now, armed with awareness and support, I found the strength to get up and move on.